Ladies, gentlemen, how's it going, man? Wolfpack, I welcome you back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. We got a lot to cover today. I'm recording in the middle of the day. We got the old grandpas playing on the backstage right now between Brady and Breeze. It's a beautiful day, man. Another day, another Sunday, another game day, another day to teach y'all how to play Dynasty the only way I know how, and that's play to win. Unlike what the Browns did today, unfortunately, we saw that play out just recently. Shout out to them. They had a great season. Kevin Stefanski, first-year coach over there, definitely turned the team around. Baker was looking good, but at the end of the day, man, you play not to lose, and a team that plays to win will beat you 9 times out of 10, and that's exactly what Andy Reid did after losing Patrick Mahomes to the concussion. I thought the Browns had a chance. Their offense is gaining some steam, but just the mismanagement, the timeouts, they wasted 2 timeouts basically, and then also the punt decision was just a little bit mind-boggling. Just there's 4 downs in football for a reason, man. Use it. Just use it. I actually I wish there was a world where we could see what some of these teams could do if they just had to play the season no punting, no field goals. I would want to see what that looks like for a team like the Chiefs. You just go in. It's a totally different mindset because you go in knowing they have 4 downs. You're no matter what, I'm playing for 4 downs. So change your play call and change everything. I think that'd be exciting to see. Obviously, it's a fucking dream world. So that's going to happen. But you know what isn't a dream world? Dynasty offseason research. All right. I got a lot that I want to go through today with you guys. But before we do anything, y'all know what time it is. Hit that intro, baby. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Welcome back. As you can see behind me, I have purchased the foregoing background for Market Watch Mondays for the foreseeable future. It is a stonks chart because, as you know, here at Market Watch Mondays, we're all about treating this fantasy game, this dynasty game, as if it were a stock market. And that's what I'm going to be doing. That's, if you guys have followed me until now, you'll know that's my MO. That's kind of how I treat the game. That's how I approach the game. So glad I got that. I also got this cool figurine. It hasn't come yet, but it's a stonks figurine with a little up and down chart. I'll show you guys what that is once I get it. But the office is coming together, man. My girlfriend got me this little goat thing here, and makes that nice little ring to your ears. But yeah, I mean, I'm building this little HQ, this mini HQ here, away from the New York headquarters. You guys know it for BDG, but the West Coast, Best Coast satellite office I'm trying to put together and get things going. So yeah, anyways, without further ado, I cover a little bit about the Chiefs-Browns game. Heartbreaking for the Browns fans, but look, you guys, first playoff win in forever, took down the Steelers, your division rivals. So kudos to you guys. Great season. Congrats. And you guys, put up a good fight. Put up a good fight with the Chiefs. Stefanski hopefully kind of learns from these types of mistakes and comes back better next year. I mean, you guys are a lot of young talent there with Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, the best running back duo in the NFL, by my estimation at least. Add some receiving weapons there and, add some defensive pieces, and who knows, man? You guys might be back again next year. It seems like Baker's definitely up for the job. Shout out to him for really turning it around after having that amazing rookie season and then just falling to the shitter and then starting off a bit slow and then kind of just rebounding in the back half. It's good to see, man. It's really good to see. Right now we got the old geezers dueling it out. I'm hoping Brady pulls out a W. Even though he's no longer on the Patriots, I feel like we owe him so much as a fan base, as we've just seen the first year without Tom Brady, what that looks like. The GOAT has been working on a discount in the Patriots for over 2 decades. So I'm forever thankful to Tom Brady. Big fan. I really hope he pulls out a W here. But it's going to be a good matchup, man. Two top 5 all-timers at the quarterback position duking out today between him and Drew Brees. It's going to be exciting. Let's see what they put together. But, let's get into the fantasies. A couple topics I want to cover today. Some of them, you might have seen it on Twitter if you guys follow me already. But if you haven't already done that, then, I just want to cover them because I think they're important topics to cover, and it's not something that people always talk about, but I like to cover it in these times just to make sure they're a little. I would classify them as basically like kind of landmines, in terms of what to avoid doing, right? And the first one, Van Jefferson, right? There seems to be a much bigger Van Jefferson fan base out there than I had initially thought. Because I tweeted yesterday that, look, Van Jefferson, he had a pretty decent game, went out, scored a touchdown, had a few touches, a few catches, and, maybe portrayed that route god persona that people kind of had him on, right? And I immediately tweeted, like, this is a sell opportunity. You guys should basically sell him for anything you can get. Third-round picks, fourth-round picks in Superflex, anything. Because I really don't think this is a guy. He is the prototype for a roster clogger to me, because he's someone that's you're just never going to feel comfortable putting into your lineups, and I don't really think he's ever going to break out. He honestly, coming into last year, he had one of the worst, if not the stone worst, profile out of anyone that's notable, I guess. Obviously, there's people that didn't get drafted and never started, and they kind of fell off the map. But of anyone that was notable and being drafted frequently in rookie drafts, I think he was the most overdrafted and also just the most overrated and the worst profile. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior, never broke out in college, never produced at a high level, which is just a red flag, like huge red flag. Someone like Henry Ruggs, at least he early declared and got like really good draft capital and was an athlete. Van Jefferson, none of those things. The only thing that I saw quite frequently was how good he was at running routes. And you guys know my view on routes. I think it's highly overrated. But more importantly, the number one thing I see people do with Van Jefferson is they say, okay, well, Josh Reynolds is gone next year. And when they've drafted him as a rookie, what did people say? Like, oh, well, they're not going to sign Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, so he's going to be that number 2 guy eventually. What happened? They signed Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods because they're fucking good. They're good players. Good players get signed. Cap is a myth. If you're a team in a big market with money, cap is a myth. It doesn't really matter though. Teams will find a way around it by structuring contracts with bonuses and whatnot. So that is the main problem with Van Jefferson. And then what happened? He could not beat out Josh Reynolds. And I know there's some of you Josh Reynolds truthers out there that think he's like really good. I don't think he's that good. I think he's an NFL caliber player, and he does a job for fantasy purposes. He's a Jag. He's just a guy. And Van Jefferson couldn't really do much to push him to the side. Even when there were other people injured, like he's just not really a consistent producer. And wide receivers that fall on their face as a rookie is not someone you want to go for. And I know there's the common narrative is like, oh, it's a 3-year window. You got to wait 3 years. I've changed my perspective on that. Yes, you got to wait 3 years in the sense that you can't expect every rookie wide receiver to come out like a Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, put up 1,000 yards from scrimmage day one, or like a Chase Claypool, put up a bunch of TDs and like 900 yards as a rookie. But you don't want them to fall on their face either. And Van Jefferson, in terms of any metric you look at, like yards per route run, efficiency, even just total stats, anything, he is not good. This is as bad as it gets in terms of a faceplant in year one. And, I learned my lesson there with guys like N'Keal Harry, who had a sterling profile. Absolutely bulletproof, in Drew's words, DF Encounter. If you guys don't know him, follow him on Twitter. He's a good buddy of mine. But yeah, like just bulletproof profile, fell flat on his face, and he had like injury concerns there. But like, you just don't want guys to fall flat on their face. You don't expect them to get 1,000 yards, but you want to see some production and then opportunity in a trend for improvement. Whether that's improved efficiency down the line that will lead to more opportunities later on, or just maybe they didn't start off really hot, but then they kind of progressed and became a much better part of the offense and increased their snaps and became a full-time player. Those are the trends you want to see with someone like with a first-year wide receiver, even if they don't truly break out. Van Jefferson, none of those things. So huge red flags, all the red flags possible as a prospect, and then all the red flags possible as a first-year rookie. And, if you want to be the person that jumps on that landmine, go for it, right? If there's someone in your league that does that, let them jump on that landmine for you. Because even if he might work out, right? I'm not saying there's a 0% chance he works out, but what I'm saying is there's a I would call it like sub 5%, probably closer to like 1% chance he works out based on the odds. And that is not a probability that I want to bet on, especially with an influx of talent. Who's to say the Rams will go out and just draft someone else because Van Jefferson hasn't been that great? You have no idea. Who's to say they don't sign one of the free agents? And they don't even need to sign a good free agent to basically put him in the shitter. They could sign like a Rashard Higgins, who I think is a pretty damn good player. If they sign Rashard Higgins, he is way better than Van Jefferson is. So you don't want to go down the path of buying into a player because you think talent is leaving at the wide receiver position. At the running back, totally different story. trying to get vacated opportunity there is a totally legit path. But for wide receivers, that's not how it works, because you have to be talented enough to earn a target. And there's been nothing that he's done so far to show me that he is talented enough to warrant a roster spot on your fantasy teams. So here's my prediction. In maybe 1 to 2 years, you're going to be dropping Van Jefferson. So in my eyes, a third-round pick, I don't even care what you paid for him, is a gold mine. A third-round pick in Superflex, especially in this year's draft, you can take a swing on someone like an Elijah Moore, maybe, right? One of those running backs, and maybe it could be like that flex option for you, like a PPR back. I would much rather swing on a couple of those guys than to hold on with Van Jefferson. Even a fourth-round pick, I can use that fourth-round pick to move up in the third to land a guy that I like. Maybe I need to move up from the mid-third to the top of third. I can use a fourth-round pick to do that. So the third-round picks and fourth-round picks, people might not view them as high, and they're like, wow, I would much rather hold a Van Jefferson, because what if he becomes a wide receiver 3? That upside is much higher. That's not how I think about it. Van Jefferson gives you no optionality. When you're on the clock in the third round, and like the third round, let's say the 3.02 is up, right? And then Elijah Moore is on the board, and you want to move up to snag him, nobody's going to take Van Jefferson in that trade to move up. Somebody will take, a lot of people will take a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick, another late third or early fourth to move up in the draft, because then they can pick whoever the hell they want. The only time you'll be able to move up with Van Jefferson is if you find another fish who is also a Van Jefferson truther is willing to make that move, right? So you limit your optionality, you limit your mobility in the draft. The trade-off for a third and fourth-round pick versus a roster clogger like Van Jefferson is huge, and it's understated, and people don't really think about it that way. But I think it is really important to load up on these third and fourth round picks, especially in a year like this year where the combine is up in the air. Not all teams played a full season, so counting stats look weird. If you don't know analytics and you don't understand market share, you're probably going to get thrown off a lot. There's a lot more maneuverability. It's going to be a very gray area in the second to third rounds, and I think there's going to be a lot of value to be had. So I think those picks are extremely valuable, and I would 100% roll on a third-round pick. Even a third-round pick probably has I don't know what the historical hit rate, maybe like a 15% hit rate, maybe like a sub 15% hit rate, like maybe like a 10% hit rate. That is a better hit rate than what Van Jefferson would provide you as a prospect before face planting. After face planting, it is 10x better than what Van Jefferson will give you. So just take if you've drafted Van Jefferson, look, I'm sorry. Just take the L and move on, because you cannot be attached to what sunk cost fallacy, what you have invested in the past when making decisions for the future. All right. So, but that kind of leads me to the next point I want to cover is, and I tweeted this out before as well, but this offseason, right? Every offseason, you got to fade this narrative that gets pushed around. Oh, you guys should buy wide receiver X because wide receiver Y, who is her teammate, is leaving. It's going to vacate a bunch of targets. The vacated targets narrative. Now, I'm not saying that like someone leaving can't benefit you at all, but that cannot be your main reason for buying someone. Because what happens when you do that is you land with guys like Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman is the poster child of vacated opportunity, right? When he got drafted, people reached for him in the first round. Why? Because they thought Tyreek Hill was out of the league, right? And they thought Mecole Hardman would step in that Tyreek Hill role and just ball out. What happened? Tyreek Hill came back. Mecole Hardman, not that useful. Then what happens? They get Sammy Watkins. And like, oh, well, Sammy Watkins is going to leave. Demarcus Robinson's a free agent. They're both going to dip. And then Mecole Hardman's going to be the wide receiver 2 on the Chiefs. Who doesn't want that, right? Wrong. What happened? Sammy Watkins came back. Demarcus Robinson came back. They signed them both because guess what? Maybe they're signaling to you that Mecole Hardman is not that guy. Is he an impact player of the NFL? Absolutely. Is he a fantastic athlete? Absolutely. He is fucking fast as hell. And watching him play is exciting. But he is not a fantasy asset you should be going for because you think a Sammy Watkins is going to leave. Even if a Sammy Watkins leaves this year, even if Demarcus Robinson leaves this year, even if it's just him and Tyreek Hill on the roster locked in, what do you think the Chiefs are going to do? You don't think they're going to draft a wide receiver in one of the most talented wide receivers class ever? What happens if they take a De'Ami Brown, right? What happens if they take like a Rondale Moore? What happens if they take a Jalen Waddle even, right? Like, there's the problem with chasing vacated opportunity without having talent as the number one focal point is that, one, the vacancy could just change because they can sign a free agent and draft someone else better than him. But two, even if they don't do that, you still have to be good enough on your own to earn that talent, right? You have to be good enough to get open. You have to be good enough to beat defensive backs on a consistent basis. And I don't think this is someone that has done that. And again, he's just someone else that didn't produce in college. He's a speed demon and great NFL player. I'm sure they scheme him great plays, but they scheme it to him in limited fashion. He's not someone that's going to get peppered with targets because he's not someone that can excel in that role, right? So that's like the narrative that I want you guys to really fade. Like whenever you see a Twitter post with a buy recommendation and one of the top reasons is X player is leaving, fade that, because you want to get the good and talented players. And the most common question I get is like, oh well, what about someone like like an AJ Brown or like a Chris Godwin? Like those are players that you want to target because they were good. Calvin Ridley, for example, he was good as a rookie. He produced with a Julio Jones offense. He earned targets with Julio Jones on the field, and he was excelling from an efficiency perspective, right? And then as a sophomore, he did the same thing. The only thing down with him was he got hurt. And then when Austin Hooper left, did that create some more opportunities for him? I'm sure it did, right? But he was a good player that you wanted. So targeting a good player and targeting talent comes first, right? Targeting vacancies is way, 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 way down the list. And the magnitude of impact and the magnitude of weight that you should be placing on the talent portion versus the vacancy portion should be like 10x. And that's how you should really think about it. So I put Mecole Hardman up there. And obviously I just talked about Van Jefferson. Just because Josh Reynolds is leaving doesn't mean he's going to be a wide receiver 3, even if he is a wide receiver 3. Do you want to have a wide receiver 3 on the Rams? That's probably a wide receiver 4 or 5 from a points perspective, right? When looking at wide receivers, if you don't provide me weekly points per game wide receiver 2 or higher upside, I really don't care. Because the only thing that you need to do to basically be finished as a low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on a totals basis is to play 16 games. And that doesn't really intrigue me. That doesn't help me win weeks. So what you really want to do is be targeting 4 to 5 wide receivers in that range, right? And I know we were saying, look, there's only 24 of them. There's 12 people in the league. Well, guess what? There's only one winner in the league as well. And some are sharks, some are fish. Be a fucking shark. Don't be a fish. A lot of my teams, they have multiple wide receivers in that range. And a lot of my teams, they have multiple running back ones. How do we do that? We try and target good players, right? So don't let that be a cap to your success. You really just want to consider the upside. And someone like a Van Jefferson, someone like a Mecole Hardman doesn't have that. Mecole Hardman, people have been chasing that shit for forever. The vacated targets theory. Just ignore it, okay? Van Jefferson, people are going to be chasing too. And look, it's just a fish move. It's a fish move because it's extremely negative EV. It's incredibly low odds, and there are fish out there that are offering the opportunity to re-roll and basically cash in on another dart, a fresh dart, and you should take that fresh dart 10 times out of 10. All right, so those are a couple things I wanted to cover. There is just that. But also, even when it comes to Mecole Hardman and Van Jefferson, even if they won that role, like on the Chiefs, I'm really not interested in any pass catcher that isn't Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce or running back. Because just look at there's not really startable options, to be honest with you. And even though it's Patrick Mahomes, he's a god, but the fact is Kelce is such a hog, and even Hill now is such a hog that it really doesn't leave that great of an opportunity left for the rest of the folks, and they just don't have enough to provide you that weekly wide receiver 2 points per game upside. So, and then Van Jefferson, I don't even say anymore, but people I think are still really attached onto how heavy 11 personnel the LA Rams used to run, but they're more of a run first team now, right? So, they're playing good defense, limiting the deep ball. Not putting the game on Goff's shoulders and really running the offense through the run game. A ton of 12 personnel that carried over from last season. So people that still think they're running really high 11 personnel are still living in the past, I would say. So, you really gotta pay attention to what's going on more recently. Okay. So those are a couple of things. And the last thing I want to cover is just very briefly, because I've talked about this already, but it's Cam Akers. And Cam Akers is a freaking stud. All right, look, the playoffs are here, and I've stressed how important it is to pay attention to playoff games. But when the game is on the line, what's happened? They put the ball in Cam Akers' hands, right? They said, hey, you're my guy. Go out there and get it done. Malcolm Brown, we know he stinks, except for week 1 NFL when he's a fucking god. 32, 16 game pace, touchdown rate, RB1 overall, obviously. But when it comes to a workhorse role, like that's Cam Akers, right? Even when Cam Akers was hurt, did Darrell Henderson get that? Nope. Did Malcolm Brown get that? Nope. And when Darrell Henderson was healthy for that 3-game stretch, who was the workhorse? Cam Akers was, right? So Cam Akers, I'm flirting with him at a first-round startup, but I can't get there from a super flex perspective because of quarterbacks. But if I'm in a one quarterback, I have no problems taking Cam Akers early. He's an extremely young, highly productive, positive trend, rocket ship usage towards the back half of the season, very similar to Miles Sanders, as I mentioned before. I will not be shocked at all if we see that same value trajectory with him and between him and Miles Sanders in this offseason. I don't think people have caught up to the usage and how he's being used and how much he's dominating. And once the masses kind of realize that, you're going to see that massive bump just like we saw with Miles Sanders. Because immediately after the 2019 season, Miles Sanders was still available in like the third or fourth round of startup drafts. I took him in the third round and fourth round of startup drafts because people had not realized and caught up yet to how good he was and how much usage he got down the line. And I think we're going to see something similar with Cam Akers here. So I think you should absolutely jump on that. I don't think you have to pay first round startup value. People have, based on like anecdotal evidence, I've seen him go in like the third round, early third, mid third of super flex drafts, right? So if you want to really secure him, pull the trigger in the second round. I don't think you regret it, but there's a bunch of running backs, right? Depends who you want, and I'll go over that later. But in that group of 2020 rookie backs, we truly got blessed with a lot of talent, and the running back position is quite deep. I did my rankings. Sorry, I didn't finish them, but I'm working on my rankings. And as part of this episode, I'm going to release out the combined 2020 and 2021 class rankings and try to kind of just go over them with you guys. But just going through that, I realized, hey, there's a lot of young talent here. So, but Cam Akers, man, workhorse, stud, volume, and he's doing it still at an extremely raw level, right? He's still not the best mental processor. He doesn't know exactly where to go. He's still learning the game, but the physical gifts are allowing him to do what he's been able to do. And that's what I fell in love with, right? I thought he was an extremely, extremely talented player, but very, very raw, right? And at one point I flirted with putting him as the running back 1 overall, right? And I didn't because he was so raw. But what I did say was, out of this entire class, he has the highest ceiling of any of them, right? He has a higher ceiling than anyone because if he's a receiver, if he gets that full 3-down workload on the Rams, rocking that 80-90% opportunity share as he's been doing, like at his age, you're looking at a top 5 running back down the line. And I'm happy because I have a lot of Cam Akers, right? I drafted him over DeAndre Swift, who I also really like now anyways, but I drafted him over DeAndre Swift in a lot of places and over behind J.K. Dobbins as my running back 3. So I'm happy to have him. I think you guys should absolutely be pursuing him. I don't like you're buying high on him, and it may seem like you're overpaying, but I don't think you are, right? And that's my philosophy of don't be scared to buy a high on a player. Don't be afraid to buy on Amazon just because it had a little gains. Don't be afraid to buy on crypto just because it had a little bit of run, because the best is yet to come, and I truly believe that the best is yet to come for Cam Akers. So, with that said, it's a great segue into my combined 2020-2021 rookie class. Now, these are preliminary. These are always in flux, but this is kind of my initial crack at it. And we'll kind of go over them, and I'll just show them to you on the screen right now. But I ranked 15 players. There might be a couple fringe guys down below, but this is kind of how I'm looking at the class, right? And the shading represents a tier cutoff for me. And then I put in the value column what I think, you should be willing to pay to kind of acquire a couple of these guys, and what it will take to acquire a couple of these guys, right? So kicking off the top, my 101 hasn't moved. Jonathan Taylor, JT2K, stud, absolute stud. I tweeted out midseason, I was not really impressed with what he was doing. He was obviously trying to transition the game. He was still learning. But he didn't look great early on, right? He was running his own blockers. The vision really wasn't there. He wasn't really breaking tackles. He wasn't really making the really shifty, nifty moves that he's making in college, those micro movements at the line to kind of like hit the right holes. But then I tweeted like, look, he has a really, really soft schedule of running against the run coming up with like Houston. I forget, was Detroit in there? Tennessee was in there, right? And if he doesn't do good here, I'm going to be very concerned. But if he does, then it's rocket ship all aboard, right? And what happened? He freaking smashed it for that entire time. He went out there, crushed all these defenses, looked like the JT2K of college that we all loved, and had the vision, had the strength, the tackle breaking ability, and then obviously excelled as a receiver, which is a shock to a lot of people. But if you looked at his college, he was actually a very, very efficient receiver and pretty good. Just didn't have much opportunity there. So Jonathan Taylor in a tier of his own. I think to get him, you have to pay too early to mid first. Maybe something like a 1.03 plus a 1.04, right? If I had JT and I'm a contending team, I don't even know if I'd give for that. I think JT is a tier above. He's 2 full tiers above here, as you can see, from any running back in this class. And he's in a class of his own. I've had him as a top 5 dynasty running back the second that he landed on the Colts. I don't think I've really moved from that at all season. I was concerned, but I didn't move because I wanted to wait and see what he could do. And he did not disappoint, right? Down the stretch, just amazing talent. I'm so glad that we got to get him in this class, and I'm so glad I got to get him as my 101 across a bunch of rookie drafts. I traded up to get him, and I totally think it was worth it across the board. So Jonathan Taylor, too early to mid first for him. And then we have the tier break, and then we have the rest of the 2022 running backs in this tier. And like I said, man, a lot of freaking talent. DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, those are interchangeable. I haven't decided. I kind of just put them back to back. I really kind of want to put Cam Akers at the top, and I'll tell you why. Because Cam Akers has volume, right? I feel like Cam Akers' volume is much more secure than DeAndre Swift. We don't know what DeAndre Swift's usage will look like. We don't know if they'll sign anyone else. We don't know if they'll keep using committee. I like Swift's usage in the passing game a lot in PPR leagues, and we know he's a very dynamic receiver there, and he does have the ability to be a workhorse role. He doesn't have it yet, but I'm thinking like the reason why I have him there is that receiving edge for him, because we still haven't seen Cam Akers get that receiving edge. And like as we see with Joe Mixon, you could be a workhorse with 80% volume, but if you don't get targets in the receiving game, you're not going to put up the points that weren't very high picks. So that's why I have DeAndre Swift there for now. I'll probably tinker with that back and forth. And then J.K. Dobbins, again, very similar. Like I'm not sure where to put these guys, but the reason why he's kind of below is, again, he does not get really much target volume. And, I'm hesitant to think that he will, really earn a workhorse role, right? I think Cam Akers and DeAndre Swift have a much more clear path. Cam Akers in particular has a way clearer path to workhorse volume than J.K. Dobbins. Now, I'm guessing they're going to re-sign Gus Edwards and kind of run it back with that type of committee approach. But I do think J.K. Dobbins might have a chance to get to like that 15 touch range, which is pretty good. He's at like 12 to 13 right now, maybe 11 or 12. But if he gets to 15 touches, that's when I get really, really excited. And as you can see here, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, I think it takes 2 middling first to get him. Maybe that's a bit expensive, but that's how much it would cost for me to let go of one of these guys to re-roll into this class, because I don't think the running backs in this class are as strong as the running backs 2022 class. Running backs to the 2020 class. So as you can see, top 5, all from the 2020 class. Just an incredible class that we've been blessed with. Okay, so as you can see, if you guys once I share my full dynasty rankings, you'll see like all of these guys are like in my top 12. Like I tend to prefer youth on the running back side, so I will always push up rookies earlier than I have to make sure I land them. That's just an approach of mine. So you'll see I put a little bit of difference between J.K. Dobbins and Antonio Gibson. Instead of 2 mid first, maybe get for 2 mid to late first. So maybe like a mid plus a late is what I mean by that. I don't think you can get either of them for 2 late first. That's probably too cheap. But this is all in super flex value, right? So again, I think you can get them there. So, but I do have them in the same tier. And the reason I have them in the same tier is because like I don't think I would really give up one for the other. If someone offered me and said, "Hey, would you take Cam Akers for J.K. Dobbins?" and I had J.K. Dobbins, I'd probably just say no. Like whenever I have guys in a tier, I think it's a lateral move because I'm unsure. I'm not confident enough to say like who is above the other. So I would rather just stay with where I'm at and kind of just let my portfolio exposure and diversity take care of itself. So that's what I mean. That's how I split the tiers, even though they have some differing values from time to time. All right. Next group, Najee Harris, running back 1. To me, he is the clear running back 1. I have him in his own tier here because he is a stud, man. And the thing is, like, if I was only basing it off this year, let's say he only broke out this year and only started loving him this year, he would not be by himself in this tier. In fact, he might even be behind a Travis Etienne. But the thing is, I really liked Najee Harris, and I had him ranked ahead of Travis Etienne last year. So I think I had Najee Harris within my top 5 last year. I had him ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I had him I think I had him ahead of J.K. Dobbins before the landing spot, before the draft. So that's how high I was on Najee Harris. He was absolutely filthy as a junior. At his size, the movement, the agility that he has, the hands that he has, the abilities to run downfield and catch as a receiver, the prototypical size, the way to break tackles, the efficiency in the red zone, he has it all. I love Najee Harris, and I'm not as concerned about age for running backs as I am about wide receivers. I just don't think the breakout age and all that stuff is as sticky for running backs. And he absolutely did dominate when he was a junior, and he still showed flashes even in earlier years when he was playing with other backs who went in the first round, guys like Josh Jacobs, right? Guys like Damian Harris who did get drafted. So it's not like he was playing behind total scrubs. And you got to recognize in the college game, very few running backs just step on as a freshman and ball out, right? Looking like Beijin Robinson was one of the most highly touted running backs in this recent class, and he had to fight his way on the field. Like in college, coaches, and Ray explained this to me, right? In college, coaches want to accumulate as much talent as possible. They don't care about making you a workhorse. They want to have as much 5-star recruit running backs as possible, right? And the upperclassmen are typically going to get the upper hand when it comes to opportunity. So it's not unnormal to see guys that don't break out as a true freshman. I mean, Cam Akers is the exception to that. Guys like J.K. Dobbins are exceptions to that rule. Even DeAndre Swift getting on the field early is an exception to that rule. And Jonathan Taylor, absolutely an exception to that rule. These are the exception, not the norm. And it's why they're above a Najee Harris, right? But from a Najee Harris, like running style, talent perspective, based on my newbie film eyeballs, he has what it takes to excel in the NFL. And he is the most landing spot proof running back in this class. So I love him. He's an early first pick. And in Superflex drafts, after Trevor Lawrence, after Justin Fields, depending on where the other quarterbacks go in terms of draft capital, I'm pulling the trigger on Ajay Harris because I think he's going to make that immediate impact. I think he's stellar. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, bit of a fall from grace here. He started off really hot and then kind of cooled down a bit, but he did not really bust as a running back. He busted because of what people paid for him, what the cost was, but I still think he was pretty damn good. When I watched him, he still has that elusiveness. He still has that receiving ability. He still has that tackle breaking ability. I mean, he was putting linebackers and just shattering ankles all season. So I'm a big fan of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm a buyer at his current cost. If you can get him for a depressed price, if you can trade out an early first for him, a middling first for Clyde Edwards-Helaire after some of these top quarterbacks and a Najee Harris goes off the board, I'm all for that. So that's the cutoff there with two guys in there, Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then the next cutoff, the reason why I have a cutoff here is because these are guys with some more question marks for me, okay? James Robinson. You guys know how much I freaking love James Robinson, right? I think he's absolutely worth a mid-first, but there are question marks there, right? Does Urban love James Robinson? If he does, it's fucking wheels up because we saw what Urban did with, like J.K. Dobbins, Zeke Elliott. I kind of joke like now Zeke will be like the second. Zeke and J.K. Dobbins will be the second and third best running backs that Urban ever coached, because I do think James Robinson is a pretty damn good talent. If you're still fading James Robinson, man, I don't know what to tell you. But there is a catch here, right? If you're in a rebuilding team, you don't necessarily want to hold on James Robinson because as much as I love him, there is that risk. There is that risk that Urban, coming from the college scene, being really plugged in there, falls in love with one of these other running backs. And they have a ton of draft capital. Let's say he falls in love with Najee Harris. He falls in love with the Travis Etienne. He falls in love with the Javonte Williams. Can James Robinson beat them out? I think so, based on what I've seen in the NFL. But that risk is there, and his value will absolutely crater if that happens. So if you're a rebuilding team, flip a James Robinson for a mid-first and protect your value. But if you're a contending team, you should absolutely be going after James Robinson because even if you miss, the risk is worth the reward because the downside is that middling first turns into like a second-round pick, right? And you lose that value. But the upside is you get a workhorse stud running back. You could be looking at like the next Arian Foster Light, and people love throwing out that comp. I mean, I don't want to throw out that comp too loosely, but that's exactly what you could be looking at because James Robinson is a workhorse. I don't want to compare him to Philip Lindsay because he's got workhorse size. He proved that he could last as a workhorse. He proved that he could last with all the volume, and he was a stud while doing it all. And he got all the volume, and Jacksonville is absolutely going to get upgraded as an offense with Trevor Lawrence and whatever other draft picks they do. Urban Meyer historically is someone that caters to the talents of his players, not trying to force square pegs into holes. So I'm excited because if they don't draft someone meaningful, that middling first will double. You'll see James Robinson jump up ahead of Clyde Rose-Helaire into that Najee Harris tier, probably into the Antonio Gibson tier for me, to be honest with you, into that second tier running backs, because what he's been able to do as a rookie has been nothing short of astounding. So if that risk is removed via draft, you will not be able to get him, at least from me, and I don't think you'll be able to get him from anyone else, because that's the main risk the knock people have against him is the risk. So as a contender, that type of asymmetric risk, that type of league-winning move, even though it provides you downside risk, is one you should make, right? I always say this. Not all hits are created equal. Hitting on a wide receiver 2 is not the same as hitting on a running back with top 5, top 10 upside, a workhorse running back. They are not the same thing. So therefore, even though one is riskier, you should be swinging more often than not, right? Especially when the downside really isn't that bad. Like, even if they draft someone, you can still, James Robinson, 1, can still beat him up for the job, but 2, you can probably still sell him for a second-round pick based on his production. You can sell him, ahead of a A.J. Dillon, ahead of a Kenneth Gainwell, right? Like, there are lots of committees around there. So you might even be able to still sell him for late round first. Like, that type of asymmetric risk-reward is how you win championships and how you win dynasty leagues, how you build dynasties, and it's what I'm always looking for across all my leagues. So you should absolutely be trying to take advantage of scenarios like that. All right, and then in this tier, we got Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. I've been flipping back and forth between Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. In the draft with Noah, I said maybe I would take Javonte Williams ahead, but the more I think about it, like I still feel like Travis Etienne is just too good of a talent to kind of put Javonte Williams ahead of him. Now, is he risky? Absolutely, I said it. He's very risky. He's very landing spot dependent. But assuming he lands in a decent enough spot and gets the draft capital, it's kind of wheels up for Travis Etienne. He kind of improved the really weak part of his game, which was as a receiver, right? He improved that facet, and he's an explosive playmaker. So even as part of a committee, he could be a high efficiency touch guy. Very similar to like a J.K. Dobbins in that respect, right? So this is, I think Travis Etienne, you can probably land him for a mid first, depending on where he lands. If the landing spot's really bad, probably late first. If the landing spot's really good, then it pushes them kind of into that Najee Harris, Clyde Rose-Helaire grouping, right? So Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, I don't want to cover too much about him. Javonte Williams, I think you can get him for a little bit later. I'm not going to reach that high for Javonte Williams. I get it. He's a tackle-breaking monster. Without the combine, we're not going to see that aspect of the game. But I'm not like 100% sold on Javonte Williams yet. I need to probably watch a little bit of film, even though I'm not a film grinder. But I do really like the player. Don't get me wrong. He has that prototypical size. It's very close between the two, and you'll see this shift for me throughout the draft season and the offseason as I do more research. All right, so that's the tier there. If you want to be less risky, right, acquire those rookie picks over a James Robinson. But if you're a contending team, you want to swing for the fences and trying to take that risk and profit now, absolutely take a swing on James Robinson. I think it'll be worth it in the end. All right, next up, Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's a really interesting prospect. Remember, Kenneth Gainwell is the one that relegated Antonio Gibson to the bench, right? And we've seen what Antonio Gibson has been like in the NFL, and it's been absolutely incredible. So I'm really intrigued by this player. The reason why I have him a bit lower is he does not prototype as a workhorse back. So he's not going to be the 3-down back. I think he prototypes as someone that is probably in a committee, kind of starts off in that like pass catching role and then potentially works into a larger role over time, similar to like how like an Austin Eckler did it, right? I think Kenneth Gainwell can do that. And, if you compare like Kenneth Gainwell and the Travis Etienne, look at their raw target volume and raw catches, you're like, oh, they might be pretty similar, right? But Kenneth Gainwell is actually a pretty legit receiver, right? Because he's not just out there taking dump offs. He's out there like he can run routes. He can kind of like take snaps out of the slot. And he was incredibly efficient as a receiver as well. And he had 51 catches, 610 yards, so about basically 12 yards of catch and 3 touchdowns, 231 carries, 1,459 yards. So incredibly efficient both on the ground. Memphis RBU, pretty impressive what they've been able to do there in that program, just pumping out these guys. Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson. I shit on Darrell Henderson, but he's actually, he's a pretty good football player. He's starting in the NFL, right? And then now you got Antonio Gibson, just took the world by storm. And Kenneth Gainwell might be, as a prospect, the best out of all of them. So he's exciting. I'll be looking to target him in the mid to late second round, depending on what wide receivers are still on the board. I do think there's a lot of talented wide receivers I want to swing on there. But, he's an intriguing prospect. Let's see where he lands. If he has a chance, if he lands in a spot where he's only going to be a scat back, like let's say he lands behind like Zeke, just for argument's sake, or just behind let's say he lands in Titans right behind Derrick Henry, where he really has no path to lead touches on the ground, or at least get a significant touches on the ground. I'm not going to be that interested because, as you guys know, I hate scat backs. I just don't invest in them ever. I don't care who it is. Maybe they'll have that one RB1 season, but you never know when it is, and you never know when to start them, and they don't hold value. So if he lands in one of those spots, I'm going to be out on Kenneth Gainwell. But if he lands in a spot where it's more wide open, right, and he has a chance to kind of get that lead role, at least get a significant chunk of it, become a lead of a running back committee, I'm very interested, right? Like a Kenneth Gainwell on San Francisco. San Francisco has no good pass-catching running backs, right? They have a really old Jerick McKinnon who basically fell off the face of the earth. But if he lands on a San Francisco with a Kyle Shanahan that knows how to use his players and scheme them into space, and he starts off in that third down pass-catching role, but he absolutely has a talent to take over and beat out some of the guys there, I become very interested. Because if he can lead that backfield that does run a lot and has a lot of plays out of the backfield, then it becomes very interesting for me, right? So he's going to be someone similar to Travis Etienne. Is going to be really interesting to see where he lands. And that's what I'm going to be on the lookout for. And then we got AJ Dillon. Some of you guys might be surprised to see him here because I wasn't the biggest AJ Dillon fan, but he's been pretty impressive in the NFL. He's still not really catching much targets, and it's obvious to me Aaron Jones is still the dog there. So if they re-sign Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon is nothing but a handcuff. But if they don't re-sign Aaron Jones and let's say Jamal Williams also leaves in free agency, then you're looking at a potential pretty good upside play for an AJ Dillon. So that's why I'm interested in him, right? If you invest a late second in an Aaron Jones signing somewhere else, you don't even have to wait around to see if he's good or not. You can flip him to an AJ Dillon truther for probably a first round pick. So, unlike vacated targets for wide receivers, I'm absolutely chasing vacated opportunities for running backs because that does translate. If you're a running back and you're starting, you're getting the ball handed to you, so the opportunity is there. So that's why I like AJ Dillon. I prefer Kenneth Gainwell to him, right? So don't get me wrong there, assuming Kenneth Gainwell has the capital and draft landing spot. But AJ Dillon is in a great spot, great offensive line, high scoring offense. They like to run the ball. That's why he's kind of worth the swing there, right? And then the last group of guys, Ramandre Stevenson, Trouba Hubbard, Trey Sermon. And, Ramandre Stevenson is an interesting one. I've been following him a little bit. Massive dude. I think he's how big is he again? I think he's 250? Or 260 or something. 246, 6 foot 246. So he's huge. He's like an AJ Dillon, like Derrick Henry in that sense, in terms of just size, not athleticism, because we know Derrick Henry is an absolute freak. I'm not trying to comp him to Derrick Henry at all, so please don't take that away from this video. But in terms of the pure size, he's like that. But the funny thing with him is the interesting thing with him is he is also a decent receiver, right? 18 catches, 211 yards. And basically 12 yards per reception on the ground. Also very efficient as a runner. So I'm pretty interested in Ramandre Stevenson here. And I know some of the other analyst guys really like him. David Wilson over on Twitter has a pretty high praise for him. And then Noah, not Noah, my co-host, but Noah Parties, pretty hilarious dude on Twitter also. Seem to have some high praise for him. So I'm going to be interested. I'm going to look at him in the late second to see kind of how it plays out there. I wonder if he gets a draft capital. If he doesn't get draft capital, I'm less interested. Chances are he's probably going to be a day 3 pick, maybe a 4th round pick. But if he gets a 3rd round draft capital, it's going to be pretty intriguing. So be on the lookout for Ramandre Stevenson. He's definitely got the prototypical size. He's definitely got the receiving chops. Just a matter of and he looks athletic enough to kind of get there. So kind of intrigued by him. And then Trouba Hubbard, man, what a fall from grace. Had he declared last year, I'm sure many people would have taken him in the first round, early second. But he went back this year, didn't look that great, and he's kind of like a one-trick pony, right? He's really, really fast, top end speed, but not really that agile. Doesn't really juke guys, doesn't really break tackles. So to me, I think he's very similar to a Tevin Coleman, right? Tevin Coleman's like that. He's a 1-speed. If he has a hole and gets top speed, he can get you some chunk yardage, and he can catch a couple passes. Not by no means a high end receiver, Nowhere close to a Kenneth Gainwell for example, but you can dump it off to him, and he's just like not very versatile, very landing spot dependent. But the thing with him was like I think he would have got really good boost to his value had there been an NFL Combine. But with that up in the air, I'm like way less intrigued because like that sell window even decreases a bit. So Trouba Hubbard, we'll kind of see where he gets. If he gets good draft capital, you're not gonna be able to fade him because he is fast. He's a really, really fast running back, and he was productive. He put up a 2K yard season in college, so it's not like he's a bum. But for me, I'm going to be much lower on Trouba Hubbard than most other people. And then lastly here, Trey Sermon. Honestly, I might actually end up putting Trey Sermon ahead of Trouba Hubbard because what I see on screen, like Trey Sermon actually looks better. His game might translate a little bit better. Unfortunately, he had that injury, so we didn't get to see them on the national championship stage, but we already saw him produce before that. But he didn't really do much for the first 3 years. He's always kind of stuck in a committee, never really broke out. He really only broke out and kind of jumped on the screen this year, playing with the likes of a Justin Fields, that Konami quarterback. We saw what that did for the likes of J.K. Dobbins. So again, is that kind of one of the things that's leading to Trey Sermon's breakout? Does he need to be with another Konami code quarterback at the next level to succeed? I'm not sure. I haven't really dug in deep enough yet, but just another prospect there that's kind of interesting. And then I didn't show number 16, 17, but I have Jamar Jefferson as well. He's pretty interesting prospect. Also, someone who it provides kind of that receiving ability. So that's what kind of makes him interesting. He also was pretty damn productive as a freshman, and then people kind of forgot about him in his sophomore year. In his freshman year, he had 239 carries, 1,380 yards, plays for Oregon State, and then had 25 receptions for 147. And then this year, he kind of put those chops back on the stage and kind of looked pretty damn good. All right, pretty damn good. But I'm unclear in terms of where he's going to go in some draft capital, so I kind of have him a little bit lower than most. And then Zach Moss from this class is kind of in that same tier, so a little bit lower than them, I guess. But those are guys who I think you can probably look for in the third round of your Superflex rookie drafts. And, if you can get Zach Moss for a third-round pick, I'd probably take a swing, but I wouldn't really be willing to go much higher than that because, like I said, I really do love the wide receivers in that later range. So there it is. That's my ranks for the combined 2020-2021 rookie running back class. It's not written in stone. I'm sure it's fluid, as you already said. I was talking through this, but the reason why I like to do these is because it gives me a sense for where I'm willing to move with my rookie picks. As you guys know, I'm a rookie pick hoarder, but I'm not a rookie pick drafter. And what that means is I accumulate them, but I don't really use a lot of them. I end up trading them out for talent a lot of the times because rookies are risky, and I'd much rather bet on another young, productive asset I've seen produce in the NFL. So, if I'm on the clock and if someone wants to give me, a DeAndre Swift, a Cam Akers, a J.K. Dobbins for that 1.03 because they really love Najee Harris, I'm going to jump on it. If they want to give me a James Robinson, right, for a 1.07, 1.08 when I'm on the clock with Javonte Williams, I'm going to take it, right? If they want to give me an A.J. Dillon to draft like a Trouba Hubbard, Trey Sermon, or Ramandre Stevenson, I'm probably going to take those deals. That's why I like to think about it in this facet. And you guys saw the quarterback one before. I have the wide receiver one that I'm still working on. That one takes me the longest amount of time just because of how much data I need to collect. So I'll release that probably in the upcoming weeks. But that's why I do these. Hopefully they're helpful for you. I'll just read it off again for those on the pod. So tier 1, Jonathan Taylor. Tier 2, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Antonio Gibson. Tier 3, Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that's the first 2021 prospect that you see in my ranks there. Tier 4, I just noticed I accidentally put James Robinson as 2021, but he's actually 2020, obviously. But Tier 4, James Robinson, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. Tier 5, Kenneth Gainwell, Ajay Dillon. Tier 6, Ramandre Stevenson, Trouba Hubbard, and Trey Sermon. So that's the top 15 combined rookie classes, rookie NFL, and incoming rookie draft class running backs for me. Hope you guys found that helpful. If you liked it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. If you liked it, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you follow me at Mike Me Up below here on Twitter, and then make sure you subscribe. Tune in for more. You guys know there's going to be a ton of off-season content It's going to be the true grind. So make sure you stick with me. I'm going to hit you with a lot more process-related stuff. I'm going to bring on some really, really cool guests. I know you guys enjoyed Ray. I have a couple others in mind that I'm speaking with, and I know you're going to love them too. They're going to bring on those facts. I'm going to bring on not just analytics guys, but I'm going to bring on film grinders. I want to learn from the other side. If you're not involving both sides in your process is fucking broken. You got to reassess what you're doing. All right. So make sure you stick around. If you enjoyed, again, hit that subscribe. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Peace out.